Hey guys, Gemma from ASD Rocks. I had a request about doing a video about how I selected a mainstream school, a primary school for Beau. And it occurs to me that what I did was not exactly normal in the way that people go about selecting it. But I knew the anxiety that I got because Beau was it was black or white with him. And if he didn't like school, the idea of that gave me so much anxiety. The fight every day to get him to school, every single day, would have been so defeating that I knew I had to get it right. I knew it had to be the right school. How do you do that? At the time, he was going to Southern Autistic School full-time, so 5 days a week. He was not in mainstream primary at all. He just wasn't ready. But I knew that at some stage I really had to get him ready, I guess. I had to, he was going to have to start modeling mainstream kids and having, it's the idea of putting your child in mainstream is that when you do that, it's once they are sort of at the higher level of the special school. So if your kid is still, got a lot of kids that are doing better than him or her, and they're able to model off that child, keep them there. Keep them in a mainstream, in the special setting. Okay, so it's only once all the other kids are starting to become at a lower level than your child, and your child hasn't got the ability to model, there isn't anyone around for them to model off, that's when you really want to start thinking about moving them on over to mainstream. So how do you do that? Not easily. What I did now, I'm telling you my experience, guys. This whole channel is my experience. Please remember that my experience is not the way it has to be, the way it should be, or law. It's just my experience, okay? It's what I did. Whether you want to model yourselves on that or not is up to you. What I did was not the easy way, okay? There are easier ways, but often the easy way doesn't necessarily get you what you need or want. So I went to the surrounding mainstream primary schools. So we were looking at putting him into primary school. He was 6, I think, at the time, 6 or 7, and I spoke to the principals. I sat down, spoke to them, and discussed that I wanted to put him into mainstream, all those sorts of things. I intentionally made friends with them, bribed them, did everything I could to make sure that they liked us, liked me, because, that's human nature. You catch more flies with honey. That's just the way that it is. So the first school that I tried, I got Beau, I already got Beau like half a uniform, just the pants and a bag and whatever, because he couldn't quite manage the whole uniform. It was all too much of a change. And I actually got him, so I just got him the pants and a school bag, and we went and we tried out a day at school. And I went with him and I sat in the classroom and I watched the way the teacher was with him. I watched the way the other kids were with him. I watched the way the program was set up. Now, this was not the right school for Beau. So Beau is very OCD. Beau would do really well in like a standard sort of dictatorship school where it's, 11 to 11:45 and 33 seconds, we do this. 11:45 and 44 seconds to, 12:03, we do that. That's Beau's sort of zen. I know what's happening, I know what's coming up, I know what's going on. Right. So this particular school was not that. This was like this sort of, organic, work it out yourself, let's appreciate each other and the differences that we all have. It works really well for some kids, but it was no good for Beau. And Beau basically ended up just stimming the entire time he was there. And they had no real discipline or structure at all. They were just so, this was just a mainstream primary school. And I was like, nah, this is not going to work. This is absolutely not going to work. I had a girlfriend whose kids went to that school. I gave her all of the uniform and everything, and I went, your kids will need this later on. You have this. This is not for us. Went to another school, spoke to them, worked out how they work, sat with them, went to school with them, sat in the class with them, did exactly the same thing. Then organised. Now, this is one thing that might be different in Australia to what it is in other countries, but once you leave your special school setting, you can't come back. So once you change over to mainstream, you're cut off. That's it. You don't get to go, oh no, it didn't work. Can we please have our spot back again? No, you can't. You go back on the end of the waiting list, and I'm sorry, but it's going to be homeschooling for you if it doesn't work. So I worked out, I negotiated 3 days at Southern Autistic, 2 days at mainstream. And we did that for I think we did that for the rest of the year. Once I'd found a school that had structure, had the right sort of environment for him, those sorts of things, that he was comfortable in. And then we slowly exposed him. I slowly got the uniform. We didn't do it all at once, it wasn't turn up, bang, new day at school, this is how it goes. It's that slow exposure, it's that slow changeover. You're going to hear me say this over and over and over again, guys. It does not matter what subject you are dealing with. Slow exposure is the key. If you're trying to toilet, if you're trying to introduce a new food, if you're trying to introduce a new school, if you're trying to introduce anything new, it is all about slow exposure, comprehension, understanding, and them feeling like they're in control. So that's going to be your key into mainstream schools. Now, I have had some horrific emails, which as far as I'm concerned are outright child abuse in some of these schools, and they're not in Australia, so I'll just leave it at that. Some emails from parents and their experiences where teachers are, letting the children wet themselves because they have continence issues and they're in mainstream and they won't take the time to get an aide to do this or to do that. They won't allow for a child to have headphones, for example, during lunchtime because they look weird. There's been some emails that I've read, not emails, messages that come through ASD Rocks about people struggling. And guys, I really want you to remember you are the rulers of your children and their experiences. If these experiences are happening to your children, you are the one responsible. Get your kid out of there. Go and complain to the school authority. Go and complain to the child authorities. Once that school goes under investigation, and you can do that without saying who you are. So once a school goes under investigation for not for child abuse, but that some of these behaviors that are a little bit old school in their way of thinking, these have to change. Now, I'm not a fan, you know me, I'm not a fan of putting severely what we would call, look, I'm not a fan of putting kids in mainstream who need to be in special school, all right? Let's just call a spade a spade. I believe our special schools are amazing. I have personally witnessed how incredible and what an amazing job our special school teachers do. I have watched them work with the kids and get them in amazing places ready to switch over. I've also seen kids who should not be in mainstream. They are not benefiting at all. They are not modeling. They are not even in class. So you know what? I'm really not a fan of putting kids who shouldn't be in mainstream. In mainstream, it's a disruption to the class. It's difficult for the teacher who's not trained. It's difficult for the child who's never in class anyway. They've got a one-on-one aid the whole time. It's taking away the aid hours from another child. There are so many reasons why, if you want your kid should stay in special school. However, if your kid is in mainstream school, then I would say, okay, let's make sure they're being treated correctly. If they're verbal and they're learning and they have the capacity, they just have one or two sort of things that really need to be worked on, then you know what? I think that it is 100% up to the school to work with you on that. But again, you catch more flies with honey if you haven't been able to catch those flies. It's time to call in the big guns. Now, the big guns usually was me. I've only once had to go to the Department of Education, and that was because this ridiculous woman at Bowes Primary School had an issue with keeping my kid down, and I wanted him kept down. He wasn't ready to go into mainstream, he wasn't ready to go into high school, and she just didn't want to, and she blamed it on the department. She said, oh, we're having issues with the department. And so I rang the department and they said, we're not having any issues. And so I called her out on it, and she said, yeah, it is me. I don't think that you should be keeping kids down. And I went, it's my kid, my choice, back off. So usually, honestly, I'm the one that is the big guns, because I've learned to stamp my feet and hold my breath, because the only one fighting for my child is me. So guys, fight for your kids is what I would say. Fight for your kids, and if you have to, bring out the big guns and call the Department of Education, call the Child Protection Services. These schools need to be held accountable for the actions, the health, the welfare. That is their number one job. And letting your child soil themselves because they just can't be bothered working together with you is 100% unacceptable. So that's what we did to get into mainstream, and I don't take no for an answer. I guess I go home and cry a lot, but I don't take no for an answer. So when I arrange these things, I don't stick to their schedules. I say, we're going to turn up and we're going to try out your class for a day. That's what we're going to do. guys, give it a shot. You can only be told no, and then don't take no for an answer. It's our kids. It's what we have to do. We don't have the luxury of saying, oh, we'll work it out later, because if that door shuts in the world of autism, if that door shuts, it doesn't open again. And the idea of going through 15 years or 12 years or whatever years it is of school, fighting every single day against the school, against your child, against everyone, that is just the most horrifying thought that I can think of. So hope this helps. All right, guys, ASD rocks.